Hello and welcome to UC Today. My name's David Dungay. Today I am joined by Steve Daly, Senior Vice President of Solutions from New Era Technology. Welcome to the show, Steve. How are you?
Hey, David. Doing well. Doing great. Thanks for having me today.
So today, Steve, we're going to be talking about AI adoption and the approaches businesses can take. Of course, AI is everywhere. Just about every business is now looking at how can they adopt this technology, what it means for them, and all those kind of strategies to kind of really make it work. So we'll get into that conversation in just a moment. Before we do, Steve, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and the business quickly?
Sure, no problem. So again, my name is Steve Daly. I'm Senior Vice President of Solutions for New Era Technology. I'm based in the United States in Cincinnati, Ohio. And my background, 35 years in information technology, mostly in application development and cloud. New Era is an organization, global IT professional services organization, about $1 billion in revenue. We have 4,500 consultants around the world and focus on a variety of different technologies and systems integrations.
So, Steve, let's get into that first question then. We're in a bit of a strange state at the moment where some businesses are quite far down the road in their AI adoption journey, and some have not even thought about it yet. What are you seeing out there, and how are you seeing organisations typically approach AI adoption?
You're exactly right, David. I think that since November 2022, when the world blew up with ChatGPT, there was a lot of imagination and people thinking about what this tool is going to be able to do. And I have no denying that AI is going to be a major impact across a variety of businesses and more than likely all businesses. But I think that imagination has kind of hit a realization that there are certain things that need to be done before you can really take advantage. And those certain things that need to be done are very important. Security, data, bias, and things like that can really negatively affect an organization. And, it's a very expensive endeavor and requires kind of a walk, don't run kind of approach. So we saw 2023 kind of be the year of experimentation. And we thought this year was going to be a lot of execution. But I think a lot of companies have pulled back because they've realized that in order to really take advantage of generative AI and AI in general, they really need to take a look at their security posture, their data, and then making sure the organization knows how to use it as well, because it can be a very expensive endeavor.
Yeah, let's double click on some of those issues and concerns you mentioned there. What are you seeing out there when it comes to organisations adopting AI? You mentioned data leakage. You mentioned a few others there. Especially recently, it's probably important to note, not everyone is getting this right in terms of the software and the approach. If you spend any time on Twitter or X, you might have seen a very famous CEO of a large CRM company throwing shots at another big vendor. So you can probably work out who that is. So, but what are you seeing, Steve?
Well, I think that to talk about that specific quote that was made recently on X, I think there's a little bit of a competitiveness between the two organizations that you're going to see one throw the other under the bus based on their approaches and their successes. And I think what he kind of really commented on is just the overhyped solutions that are out there. And that's, what we've seen with technology just in general. In the 35 years, again, that I've been doing tech, it always seems that you have this huge amount of hype and then people kind of realize what's real about it, what needs to be done. And I think that's what he was kind of talking about. And there's still a big question on the return on investment and what we call the real is when you go through it. Because there is, unlike Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel, where you knew what those tools did, Word wrote documents, Excel calculated things, Gen AI is still it's really kind of an answer looking for a problem. And so you mentioned some of the data security. It's shadow AI. A lot of organizations are fighting users, that's, stand up their own accounts with some of these AI companies, and they're putting intellectual property out, and they're not really sure what's going to happen to that data. So you have, IP or intellectual property leakage. You have data breaches where you've got, data that people put into these third-party AI sites, and then that vendor gets breached because a lot of these companies are new, a lot of these startups are new, and there's a lot of regulatory and compliance and governance issues that they might not be as adept at that you expect them to be. That's of course that's the biggest one we see. Implementation challenges is another big one. There's so much out there right now as far as people coming to market. It's what do we do? There's almost a bevy of choice now, and people are like, do I go with Microsoft? Do I go with company X or company Y or company Z? And I think those are implementation challenges. And then lastly, it's the organizational challenge. I think that when ChatGPT blew up and the media really kind of talked about what this is going to do to the economy and jobs, it had caught a lot of people off guard. How's this going to impact my livelihood? How's this going to impact my day-to-day work? And a lot of people saw it as a very much of a negative, like robotics and manufacturing back in the 70s and 80s. They're seeing generative AI kind of have the same impact. And so it's we kind of look at it as a three-legged stool. It's the technical readiness, the user enablement, and the organizational challenges all have to kind of come together. And then lastly is Europe, and it has already done this, and the United States is looking at different regulatory things that are going to happen with AI around how it can be used or cannot be used. And I think that regulatory challenge still has a lot of companies kind of cautious because they don't want to spend a lot of money on something and then have a regulatory agency come in and say, you can't do that. And then that money just kind of goes away.
One of the a couple of things I want to pick up in that, Steve. You mentioned the hype and reality. Of course, this is one of these very special markets or industries where the hype can become the reality in quite a quick succession because things are moving so quickly. And the other thing was implementation as well. Of course, there are IT teams out there that have to implement this on the ground based on that reality that you spoke about. But the one thing I am hearing more and more of is there is a disconnect between the C-suite and the IT teams when it comes to deploying AI. What are you seeing? Can you maybe explain a bit more about what you see around that sort of disconnect?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it is, C-suite people are, there's definitely a fear of missing out or a FOMO because the press, Harvard, the last few issues of Harvard Business Review have talked about AI and its impact in business, and all the management consultants are pushing it. And I think it's got a silver bullet messaging that's come out over the past 2 years since ChatGPT came out. We referenced some of that, both the positive and the negative. And I think that's what that's done is put a lot of pressure on CIOs to really find a way to at least answer the question, when are we going to do something with generative AI? When are we going to do something? I want to be able to tell our customers that we're doing something, or our board of directors or our stakeholders or stockholders that we're actually doing something. And in a recent report, 68% of CIOs believe that they're getting a lot of unreasonable expectations and pressure around implementation of AI solutions. And they kind of have to hold the reins back a little bit. And it's interesting. Some of the conversations we have, the push for AI brings up projects that CIOs wanted to do a couple of years ago in the cloud transformation momentum that was going on, like data security and compute and cloud and things like that. Things that if done back then could have definitely helped some of this pressure that the C-suite is putting on organizations. But it's coming, CEOs are getting it from all sides. The market is telling them that they need to be doing something with generative AI. Stockholders and boards of directors are coming to the CEO and saying, you need to drive operational efficiency, and everybody's telling us Gen AI can do that. And so they're getting pressure to do it. And I think that's a lot of it is important, but there's definitely a process to be able to do it for sure. Start small, get a strategy, kind of rinse, wash, repeat, and build up the projects over time.
Maybe you could talk a little bit more specifically now about what New Era is doing in terms of helping customers plan for their AI projects, and maybe you could talk around some of the more common projects you're seeing as well out there. What's going on that front?
Well, what's interesting is we're seeing some pullback. Some of the pullback we've been talking about today is around kind of general purpose use of generative AI, meaning like generative office productivity tools like Microsoft 365 and using generative AI there, because like I stated earlier, it's still people are still trying to figure out how can generative AI help me write an email better or things like that. What we're seeing is very much focused solutions around particular what we call personas and jobs to be done. And really, it's kind of leveraging the Toyota motor manufacturing idea of Kaizen, where you kind of look at a persona and jobs to be done, and then you look at where can I find efficiencies, where can I eliminate waste at a very low level within the organization. And then it's kind of looking for that 1% that compounds over time. And, if I fix this one job for a legal professional, or I fix, this one job for a marketing professional, and then I multiply that by 5 and 10 over weeks and months, I start to see that bottom up approach of generative AI making an impact. And I think doing that process at the beginning, along with dealing with some of the issues we talked about earlier, like security and data, that helps more of the global or organization-wide generative AI solutions, is really what we see as the big success. So again, it's really kind of, while you're looking for the big blue ocean kind of solutions, focus on some smaller solutions where you can get impact to jobs and roles within the organization. One big area we're seeing that is in application development. Generative AI in application development has really seen some objective, measurable results in getting better code out the door faster, whether that's out the door to your internal customers or out the door to your external customers. Better quality code faster is a very easy thing to measure in the application development space. So we kind of take a multi-prong approach is kind of what we look at it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. You spoke about impact there. I mean, that's really important. Measuring the ROI of these projects. So often it can be difficult to measure ROI on a multitude of things. AI and email, I always find can help you write an email more efficiently, better. But it's really difficult to measure that.
Absolutely.
What are you seeing from an ROI perspective? How are you helping businesses really understand this and whether they're being successful or whether they're not being successful? And how are you maybe helping accelerate that adoption as a result?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to measurement and the tools with productivity applications, like you mentioned, the tools to do that kind of measurement. And again, looking at specific real data, not just a perception like, oh, I can do my emails, an hour faster than I can without Copilot, but really looking at specific details, like I can get this job done, an hour faster. For example, in marketing, I can at least start the content of an article for a blog or another piece of marketing content. I can use this tool and it can save me time to at least get the first draft done, or save me time to get a follow-up draft, to be able to tailor it to a particular audience, or add a search engine optimization terminology to an article. That's one way. The other one is just reduction of defects. I think that whether you look at inbound invoices coming into an organization and using document intelligence to be able to route a document appropriately, and measuring, what's the impact of a document not, for example, an invoice not getting paid on time. Has a dramatic and direct effect to an organization. Whereas if I put some intelligence on it and really look at how quickly I can get an invoice in and getting it paid, or more importantly, quote to cash, getting an order that comes in, getting that order fulfilled, and then getting paid for that order. How can I make that happen faster with internal operations, whether I'm using generative AI or discriminative AI to be able to measure that information?
Yeah. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about your intelligent adoption framework. And this is very new and shiny, but it's helping businesses really thrive in this area. Can you maybe give us a bit of an outline what that is, and how it's helping businesses adopt AI?
Sure. So in my summary of New Era Technology, I kind of talked about us as a technology firm. But we really have a lot of different areas of focus. Obviously we're a technology organization. We also have a very strong digital marketing organization, basically an agency that focuses on how to make messages work well within a direct-to-consumer kind of market. And then we have a large organizational change management group that helps with large ERP implementations. So really the intelligent adoption framework emerged from the combined groups of technology, digital, and organizational change management. We really designed it to help organizations integrate generative AI effectively. And we really look at strategic alignments, making sure that AI initiatives align to business objectives, whether it's at a high level or even down to a profit and loss statement level. Technical readiness. So we look at, what is the organization? Is it safe? Is it efficient to use AI with existing systems? And then lastly, user enablement. So how do we involve stakeholders from the very beginning throughout the process? Multidisciplinary, I mentioned, legal and marketing, IT. How do I get all these different people to come together? And then we walk them through kind of 4 phases. We call it, envision. So how do we establish a clear vision for what we want to do? We assess the readiness of the organization, and then we plan for an evaluation of a solution, whatever that solution is, kind of comes out of that envision phase. And then once we pick a particular solution, we then do an alignment phase where we look at, where are we with security? Where are we with data? Do we want to use a third-party product? Or do we want to roll our own? And that's what the alignment phase of what does. We also look to specific measures for the next phase, which is the launch phase. So how do we pilot this? How do we get this out to a set of personas and jobs to be done over a period of time? Typically, we use 12 weeks or less to do that launch phase because we want to get that data back into the system as quickly as possible. The system being the framework, so we can look at, okay, it worked well here, it didn't work well here. And again, it's very much of an agile approach. We're a development shop. And so, using that application development, agile management approach definitely helps as well. And then lastly, and most importantly, is evolve. That last phase, as we've seen over the past 2 years, generative AI is changing on a day-by-day basis. Somebody new is coming out with a new model, a new product, a new prompt, and things are changing so fast that you have to evolve with it over time. So how do we kind of be nimble? How do we make the organization nimble with that? And we really think that's kind of a balanced approach that really helps equip our clients and our client stakeholders with enough knowledge to make informed decisions about integrating AI smoothly and successfully and responsibly, most importantly, responsibly to the organization.
Yeah, and that can't be underestimated. It's so important to have a plan when it comes to adopting AI. Steve, before we leave today's conversation, because we are unfortunately coming towards the end, would you like to give our audience maybe a few tips or some final pieces of advice that they should really be thinking about when it comes to accelerating the performance of their AI on their kind of adoption journey?
Sure. I think, I say start with strategy, but again, I don't want to, anytime you use the word strategy, people think of a very large book hitting a table, right? It's 1,000 pages going thunk on a table. A strategy doesn't need to be that thought out. And I know that sounds a little bit of an oxymoron, an unthought out strategy, but you want to think about it enough to be able to do a test. I think that, getting, the organization ready to look at a solution that you can do in an encapsulated way is really important. Microsoft Copilot Studio allows you to build a virtual assistant that you can focus on a single file. That's a great way of getting started with generative AI very quickly. And then secondly, and really just kind of say the top 2 or 3. Second is data. Look at the data that as far as usage and things like that. I think there's a lot of maturity that's going to be coming around some of these vendors around how you can judge the usage and the success of generative AI. And then lastly, is employee training. I think people need to really understand how to use this tool responsibly and accurately, because again, especially in the world of shadow AI, where you can have people using ChatGPT on their own, you can really get yourself in trouble. So it's I think it's we use kind of cautious execution is our theme for 2024 and 2025 is approach it cautiously, but you don't want to stand on the sidelines for too long, because I think like some have said, you're going to be competing with companies that are using AI, and you need to be ready for that. I think that's what the big challenge is going to be in the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And I think for those organizations where they think AI might not be ready for them today, I think a lot of those hurdles will be overcome in 3, 6, 12, 18 months as well, and it will be sort of suitable. Steve, unfortunately that is all we have time for. I've really enjoyed the conversation, but I'd like to say thank you so much for coming along and sharing some of your insights.
Sure. Thanks, David. I really appreciate it. Let me know if we can do it again sometime.
Fantastic. And thank you for watching. You've been watching me, David Dungay, on UC Today. If you liked today's conversation, please give us a like and a share on social media. That's it from me. See you next time.